In this demonstration of the silkscreen process, I'm going to cut a stencil and I'm going to print it in two different directions using a framework where I have a screen that's been attached to a frame, and I can lift it and place it into place, and I can place it into place each time in the exact same position. So I can move it up on a hinge. I have the paper into a place down here in the bottom. If you see down in this area, there's a piece of tape here that's made a little cross. There's also a piece of tape up here at the top which allows me the same positioning on the other direction, so that when I put my screen down, it will also print on exactly the place where I want it to. So I've made the board with the paper in place, and then I've taken another piece of paper and I've just used a regular piece of copy paper again, and I folded it a number of times and made a number of folds. Just folded it and used the scissors and cut it. Now here's what my paper looks like. I folded it a whole bunch of times, and each time I've just on the fold taken the scissors and freely cut an opening in that paper by just simply cutting in, cutting down just a little bit, and cutting it away, so that I end up with both a positive and a negative space where I cut it out. So in this case, that was this shape right here. I have a couple more here to cut, so I'm going to do that. I cut a little bit longer one and maybe a little bit thinner one here. And a last one on the last fold. I want you to understand that this is just a simple design. This is nothing elaborate. I haven't thought about it a whole lot ahead of time. I just wanted something vertical that would give me something that I could both use this direction and this direction and cross. So I have the paper, I have the cutouts. This is what I'm going to use as a stencil. All right. So I'll move these things, and I'll place my stencil directly on top of the paper, and my ink is going to go through those holes, and the stencil is going to attach itself to the screen. So there's my stencil under the screen, and my screen's on top. Now, in this demonstration, I'm going to try to use straight tempera paint, because I want to use that in my classroom. So I'm going to just take the straight tempera paint and shake it up a bit and use it directly out of the bottle. And see how this is going to work for me. I'm going to pour. So we'll just pour it out of the bottle like this. Okay. And then we'll use our wider squeegee here to squeegee down through the paper this direction, and we'll squeegee it back this direction. Okay, so I'm going to set the squeegee aside, and I'm going to lift the screen up, and as you can see, I've printed on the screen, and I've printed on the paper through the openings that were on the screen. Now I've got a little bit of the paper that is not attached, so I'm going to, and you can't see this, but I'm going to tape it down so that it won't flop around on me. It looks like maybe that last one didn't print anyway, but that's okay. I just want to be sure my stencil doesn't move around, and I'll show you the stencil in a little bit. But note that I have printed now this direction, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this paper so that it is going to print the next time this direction. So I'm just going to move the paper, stick it up against this tape right here so I know exactly where it's going to print, and lay my stencil back down, and take my ink, notice I didn't add any more ink to it. I'm relying on there being enough ink on the screen to do it at least once, once each direction. Now I'm going to lift my screen again. The screen didn't change. In this case, my paper came up with it because it was wet, and it actually went ahead and, because it was wet, printed on the stencil itself. So using this technique, you would want to then make sure that the paper is dry so that it doesn't alter the screen as far as the stencil is concerned. So probably what you'd do is you'd print one direction 5 or 6 times, and then let them dry, and then come back and after the first one is dry, come back and start moving it the other direction. So not to say that you couldn't use an entirely different screen on this as well, but with only the one screen to use, this is what we end up with. And you see that some of the ink bled here a little bit because of the way that it was screened this direction. I moved the squeegee sideways, and that kind of did that little thing there. But as you can see, using one simple design, you can then do some things with this as well. And we can vary this just a little bit, and I'll show you how we can do that in the next little segment. Before I leave, I'm going to take the screen off and show you what the screen looks like when it's off, and show you what the stencil looked like, because I'll be taking this off and washing it anyway. But this is the bottom of the screen, and this is where I taped it up so it wouldn't flop around. And this, as you can see here, then is the stencil, and all I have to do is just remove it and I'm good to go. The positive shapes that I cut away, some of these shapes here that I've laid down, and place them on top of, and in some way block the ink from being printed over, and lay these down in such a way that that ink will stay when I print. And then I print everything else but that. In other words, the positive shapes now are going to black out the ink. So I'm going to lay the screen back down, and I'm going to use a different color. And this time I'm going to use a little red. And I'm going to put the red same way I did before. onto the screen. Using the same squeegee, pushing the screen down. Lay my squeegee down, lift up my screen, and then peel away the paper. Now I have blocked out the blue and allowed it to go. I printed the red over the blue, which causes this to go purple, because red and blue is purple. So I have red, I have white, I have blue, and I have purple. So with two colors, I've created 4-color design. I could continue printing other things on here as well. And I'll show you here that if I were to, for example, print this again, I could even take those solid pieces lay the screen down, lay the solid pieces down, and then if I were to print this, in this case, let's say I print it again, but this time I print it with the blue. I'm just going to go ahead and run that right on top of this. Since I'll be printing a lot of surface, I'm going to put a lot of blue on there. And I'll just not even clean the screen. I'll just print right over top of this. I'll drag some red in with it. And there, of course, is all the positive shapes, and the background printed in blue. I could then come in here and put in some positive shapes to keep the blue and print another color on top of that. I'll just have to be careful not to get so carried away so I don't end up with a whole bunch of extra here, but that'll wash off without any problem because this is just water-based paint. So that's that, and I'll take the screen off again, show you what that looks like, and show you that the images, the positive shapes here are just on here with ink so that they can just be peeled off and thrown away and cleaned up just like I did before. So I can just peel all these off and dump them in the wastebasket, take this over to the sink, wash it off with water, and it's good to go.